Solar panels were first used in satellites because we wanted it to last forever. Otherwise, the batteries would wear out.
Do we have the ability to solve this crisis? Fortunately, the exciting answer to this question is also yes.
अगर हम डेवलपमेंट एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली नहीं करते हैं, विकास और प्रकृति पर्यावरण की रक्षा नहीं करते हैं, तो विकास हमारे लिए भी संकट बन सकता है.
Avada is a leading builder of renewable energy projects in India. We have built complex solar and wind power projects aggregating to over 1.1 gigawatt capacities across diverse geographies. We have built some of India's largest capacities. We were the first in the country to build a 1 gigawatt solar portfolio.
This is only the beginning. We need scale to power the entire country using the solar, scale to change the brown sources of energy with cleaner sources of energy like solar and wind. Thanks to our amazing engineering, procurement and construction team, we have managed to do the solar project and wind project in a very economical and sustainable fashion.
Our emphasis on systems and processes has enabled the organization for flawless execution by consistently decreasing its on-ground development cycle, thus completing projects several months before schedule. We have pioneered solar power solutions, both in terms of plant size and total installation capacity, helping bring the solar tariff closer to grid parity. The plants we have built were numbered among those with the highest efficiency in India.
We are showing the world that solar energy is not only sustainable form of energy, but investing in solar can be profitable too.
With our strong EPC execution capabilities and project portfolio, we had managed to build a competitive advantage through already locked-in land banks, long-term signed MOUs, PPAs, with state utilities. We have drawn investors like Asian Development Bank, General Electric Capital, and DG from Germany for our past projects.
In next 5 years, India would become the largest clean energy power producer in the world.
We need to be responsible because in the coming years, India is going to be a major manufacturing hub for the world. Currently, Germany, Denmark and Costa Rica are the leading countries with regards to renewable energy generation.
In the next 10 years, we will take India forward to a sustainable journey.
Avada is a socially conscious organization conceived with a vision to look at all levels of social change. The scalability of renewable projects allows its usage in varied geographies and applications. This presents a unique advantage for India, where 540 million out of 1.2 billion Indians do not have access to electricity.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Teachers from government school are trained in specialized subjects to enhance their training delivery mechanism by using experiential training methodology.
Hi Mayor, I'm online testing कर सकते हैं.
We work with the women in the rural communities to ensure that they can learn teaching, they can learn the
You can use that backdrop.
the income of the family, and what it also does, it ensures that
The
women's
session one. Yeah, the different one that
becomes
are
better.
Yeah.
As a holistic, environmental friendly company,
Hello.
Green Efforts does not stop with clean energy. Due to non-availability of medical services and lack of awareness among rural Indians, we are seeing a high rate of infant mortality. We need to bridge this gap which exists between urban and rural India.
I know the world can come together as one at a time of crisis. We always have.
This is a moment in time when business leaders, government officials, and citizens from all over India have come together to embrace the potential for a bright new future and a sustainable world.
We are the generation responsible for the way we are going to be for the next 500 years. All we have to do is to start looking up at the sky. Let's create a history that's going to be cherished. Avada, promise of a sustainable future.
Hi, Varun, can you hear me? Hello, hi. Hi, Varun, you're on mute. Can you hear me? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Sir, I'm stopping this video, sir.
Sorry, I can't hear you properly. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, I'm here. I can hear you clearly. I'm stopping this video. This video is playing on just right now.
Okay, no, just 1 minute. Can I, let me first change my backdrop.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
How do I
Hello.
change the backdrop here? Hi, Praveer. Hi, good morning.
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, Praveer, do you mind speaking? I'm not sure. I still have problems in hearing Varun. I want to make sure it's not the case with everyone.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me now? Hello?
All right. No, maybe there is a problem with the connection at my side. Let me.
Varun, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Loud and clear, right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
And what about video? Is it clear?
Video is clear.
Yes,
Okay,
it's much better now. I think having both the Wi-Fi and 4G was confusing it. I don't know how to change my backdrop. Do I do it before settings? What did it say?
Yes, sir.
Audio.
Sir, you can go into your audio. Yeah, I can hear
Audio.
you. Loud and clear. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, no. I'm thinking option audio devices. No.
Sir, you can go in the audio and video tab. You can go in the audio and video tab. Audio and video tab.
No, there is a video separate. Audio devices, find device, polling, Q&A,
No,
change
no.
audio connection.
No,
Host
sir.
these are audio devices. No.
No,
Which
no. So
option?
there is a tab. There is a tab. File, edit, share, view, then audio and video.
Okay, I don't know why I'm not getting it. Hang on a minute. Let me go back to the. Or should I make that change
Sir,
before I?
sir, you can click on the next arrow to stop video. There is another option.
Sorry,
Sir,
say
am I
that again.
audible?
Yes, I am audible. You are audible. Can you say that again? What were you saying?
So what I was saying, sir, if in the top you are finding some icons like file, edit, share, view.
No,
Yes.
none of them. Once I'm connected, I only have the options at the bottom, which is mute, stop video, share, participants.
In the top, sir. In the top.
Sir,
You
sir,
have audio and video.
No,
sir,
at the
no
top,
issue. Please move. Sir, please move down your cursor to the bottom. Then there is an option to stop video.
Yeah. Okay, I've done that.
Yeah, there is little arrow. Click on that arrow.
The share arrow.
No, on the stop video, just next to the stop video, there is a little arrow to change
Yeah.
virtual background. Click on change virtual background.
And optimize for images, actually whiteboard, photos box.
So once you click on change virtual background,
No, I'm afraid I don't see that. I see recently shared whiteboard, photos.
just you have to click on the next arrow to the stop video. There is option. Once you click on the arrow, you will got the option.
Yes.
Yeah, the arrow is.
Just click on that arrow, sir.
Which
Down
arrow?
arrow.
There is only the share arrow.
No. The stop video one arrow, sir.
I have already stopped the video.
In that there
Now
an option
what?
coming. In that there an option coming. Change virtual background.
Images, share screen.
No, I have got it all.
No, I don't know system at all. Let me go to settings and see remove barriers.
Now I am.
Let me log off. I'll try and
Yeah.
change the and then log back in. Hi, Amit.
Sure, sir.
Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm struggling with changing my backdrop. Not being in office is a disadvantage. And we never use Cisco WebEx actually, so I'm not aware of this system.
Yeah, so Varun, I think we can try. I have
Yes,
no
sir, we can
problem
try.
on the audio and video. Maybe you can look at that. Let
so-
me try to share the presentation from my side. That will be easy for me to handle because the time is limited. That's the challenge.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
So let me see. I have to do it from the share, right?
Share. You have to share the content, sir. Share your screen. I
content.
mean.
Share content, and then I have to go where?
To your presentation.
Just I have minimized it. Is it visible?
No, not yet, sir. Sir,
Sir, first of all, open your document. Sir, first of all, you have to open your document. Then click on share button. Yeah, then you will have to click on share.
Just
Then after open document will be visible there.
no, when I click on the share on the Cisco WebEx, then it is asking for either the just a moment.
you have to share your screen, sir.
Share content, share web browser, and share
ma'am.
by meeting
Yeah, ma'am.
window.
Sir, I'm telling you, just you have to open your document, please.
No, there is no presentation. No. Yeah. Only discussion. Yeah. He has to speak. He has to speak extempore.
Sir, please open your document.
Yes, I have opened my document.
Okay. Then move to the WebEx window and click on share.
I have to go on.
Share bottom. You have to move down the cursor to the bottom and then click on share.
There is nothing like share on that window, right? It is a PPT.
No issue, sir. You have to click on the share tab.
Sir, you have to click on share tab in the WebEx.
That's what I'm saying. So in the WebEx, there is a share, and when I go to share, there is a share content, share web browser, and share my meeting window. So what should I click?
Sir, there is your open window will be visible. You have to move down your cursor. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Your desktop window is sharing. You have to open your presentation, please.
Can you see it now, the presentation?
No, not presentation. Your desktop window is visible.
See, on the share, there are only three options: share content, share web browser, and share my meeting window. Which one do you want me to click?
Sir, not this share. Sir, there is a share in the bottom. There is a share tab in the bottom.
Okay. Okay, sure.
Now you
And
have to
there,
share the you have to share the screen. Screen 1.
तो आप ये बोलिए ना भाई. Then share.
Now you can, yes sir.
Now you can see this?
Yes sir, I can see it. You can maximize your presentation, sir. Yes sir, perfectly fine. Now you can try to run it. Yeah.
Okay. So for now, I am switching it off.
Okay, sir.
Switching it at that time, yeah.
Yes.
कि अभी भी विजिबल है आपकी मेन स्क्रीन पे क्या आ रहा है?
नहीं अब नहीं है सर. जब आप स्टॉप शेयरिंग कर देंगे तो सर नहीं होगा फिर. Am I audible, sir?
I can see you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, Varun. Is the background showing okay?
Yes, ma'am. This is fine.
And you can hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly, ma'am.
All right. Okay.
Log in again with the same procedure, and you will be able to, if there is no concern with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Just delete it. Type some middle name, say, so then try log in. Let me input this. You can but I know how you will not be able to do the other thing. So that is the reason something.
AMP Energy India is India's leading and fastest growing renewable energy company. With a current portfolio of about 1 gigawatt spread across the 15 states in the country, AMP Energy India is one of India's only triple play renewable developer, that is utility, distributed generation and open access, having a balanced portfolio of CNI and utility customers. Currently offers green power to 45 plus marquee customers across pharmaceuticals, automobiles, cement, steel, heavy engineering, infrastructure, FMCG, educational institutions, IT and data centers, utilities and government bodies, leading to a well-balanced portfolio. Some of these customers are amongst country's leading corporates, such as Skoda Auto Volkswagen India, Cipla, Bharti Airtel, Britannia, AB InBev, Tata Hitachi, Orient Cement, L&T Metro Rail, and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, to name a few. AMP Energy India provides a strong value proposition to its customers by acting as a one-stop shop for energy, providing sustainable solutions to them across different geographies and technologies such as solar, wind, hybrids, storage and energy management. This helps the customers in reducing their overall energy costs and mitigating their carbon footprint. AMP Energy India is the Indian arm of the AMP Energy Group headquartered in Toronto, Canada, with about $2 billion total capex financed globally. A pipeline of 1.5 gigawatt plus, AMP Energy is a rapidly growing global IPP backed by leading investors with a focus on the leading solar renewable markets such as US, Canada, India, Japan and Australia globally. Having the backing of leading international institutional investors such as Kotak, SMBC, CBRE Caledon and LGD Lightstone Espada. AMP Energy India has a deep debt and equity financing expertise, which in turn transpires into a high ESG, also known as IFC standards and corporate governance standards, with a unique capability to straddle utility-scale renewable energy projects, power markets, battery energy storage and CNI RE projects in India and beyond. AMP Energy India is well on its way to doubling its portfolio by 2022 and becoming a true market leader and a global powerhouse in delivering tomorrow's energy today.
ID, can you stop the video, please? Yes, sir, you're saying something?
हाँ वो मैंने डाल दिया था उस पे। ये पीएमपी फॉर ईयरली ड्यूटी इंसिडेंट्स में क्या कहना चाह रहे थे हम वो लोग में? पीएमपी
So we can start the session. I think Honorable Secretary is also there.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on behalf of CII and MNRE. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you. My name is Rajiv Mishra. I am the Managing Director of a company called CLP India, and I also co-chair the Power Committee of the Confederation of Indian Industry in India. Let me provide, this is a session where we're going to discuss the self-reliance for renewable energy manufacturing, and we have an incredible panel of experts to talk on that. But before that, if I could perhaps, with everyone's permission, just set a little bit of context. Why are we talking about this? Now, we all know that renewable energy investment has been an area of undoubted success for our country. What we have done in the country's done in the last few years has been remarkable and has been recognized by the world at large as such. We have over nearly 95 gigawatts currently, but our targets are absolutely fantastic: 175 gigawatts by 2022, 450 gigawatts by 2030. So it's obvious that we are going to be one of the largest renewable energy markets in the world. And some other data, you know, whether you talk about FDI inflows, which has attracted over 40 billion over the last few years. Last year itself, until February this year, nearly 10 billion US dollars. Everything looks, very, very positive and poised for this tremendous growth, whereby we not only would meet but exceed our NDC targets. However, attached to that are some challenges. A very large proportion of our solar, in particular, are imported. Now, this in the backdrop of the fact that we are a country which has remained in current account deficit for nearly 2 decades, if not more. And also, if we look at, although this is a subject of macroeconomy, not renewable energy, and I'm no expert to talk about it, but if we look at the breakup of our imports and exports, many of our exports tend to be raw materials, and we tend to import a lot of the finished goods, which is obviously not a good sign. Aside from that, the wind industry, where we have been an early leader and most of the manufacturing used to be or has traditionally been within the country to a large extent, there too we have seen signs of stress. Quite a few of our domestic wind energy producers have seen debt restructurings, and some even have gone into bankruptcy court, and thereby there seems to be it's not gone as well as we want. So given the fact that we are going to expand our capacity, you know, nearly 5-fold, this is the reason why the government of India announced the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme to correct this last year. We at CII, because quite clearly, you know, if you look at the energy sector, affordability, sustainability, and energy security are the 3 aspects which the government looks at, and such a high dependence on imports obviously brings into question energy security, amongst other things. And one hasn't even started talking about creating jobs, the relatively low share of manufacturing in our GDP, and so on. So what we did is at CII we requested PwC to do a deep dive into this, to do a study and perhaps recommend, and particularly with the Honorable Secretary on this meeting as well, sort of recommendations and a roadmap to promote RE manufacturing in India. So without much ado, if I may ask now Amit Kumar, partner of PwC, to make the presentation, please. Thanks. Amit, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra, and you have set the background, so I'll straight away go to the report and the study which we have carried out jointly. I hope my screen is visible.
No, not yet.
Just Can you see it now? Can you see it now?
Not yet, Amit. Not yet. As soon as you see it, we'll let you know.
Sure. If I can request the CII team then to help and put it on the screen then. I see
Yes,
some problem. Varun, if you can do that.
Yes, we can see it now. Go ahead, please,
Okay.
Amit.
Okay. So thank you so much, Mr. Mishra. So you have set the background. In fact, this report was jointly undertaken by the CIA and the PwC team, and it undertakes a deep dive analysis of various RE technologies to understand the current manufacturing capacity, as you mentioned, the value chain involved in the manufacturing of these components, issues and challenges faced by the sector, skills and employment opportunities which are offered by this. We have also included some case studies to draw learnings for the sector and recommendations to promote manufacturing for each of the technologies. And further, the report also analyzes the application of RE technologies in other industries to make the users self-sustainable. And towards the end of the report, a roadmap has also been laid out to suggest stakeholders with a key intervention to be undertaken to boost the overall RE manufacturing in India. So I am presenting here some key highlights for the 5 areas we covered, 5 technologies we covered, which include solar manufacturing, wind, green hydrogen, biofuel, energy storage, and then a combined one to what overall is it for the Indian economy in terms of investment, in terms of employment opportunities, energy security, and a holistic overview of it. So before I go into the technologies, let us just have a look as to what the manufacturing, how the manufacturing is important, and also some flavor of the renewable energy into it. If you see the past decade, the economic indicators from 2010 to 2020, the GDP has grown from 1.68 to 3.05, almost doubled. The per capita income also has grown in proportion, and the population, which is 1.23, 1.39 billion. During this period, if you look at the energy overall, energy production has gone from 304 to 366. The important point to note is that while the other parameters on the economy side has grown by that proportion almost double, here is the energy production in million tons of oil equivalent and also primary energy supply, which has grown from 701 to 919. Almost 30%.
Sorry to interrupt. May I request you tell the person handling the slides to move on to the next slide, because
yeah,
so that
please,
you can correlate.
Sure. So Varun, if you can go to the next one, which is what I'm. Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
So now you can see this. So net energy imports have grown from 205 to 348, and the crude oil imports from 164 to 227. Importantly, if you see the trade balance in the FY21, which has been the pandemic year, it has a net negative of $102 billion. And on a quarterly basis, if you see, it continues to be in a differential mode. So imports have been more than exports. This is expected in a country like India, developing country like India. But manufacturing generated just 14% of India's GDP. So while we have on the one hand a trade balance which is negative, and manufacturing is not significant in terms of overall GDP of India, then I think there is a clear-cut case for increasing the manufacturing setup here and increase its share so that more and more population can get involved. Job employments are there. At the same time, we reduce our imported dependence on the imported energy forms. Now, on the energy side, while we know that in the last 2-3 years, every year the capacity addition of renewable energy is more than the conventional systems in the system, but still there is a more to do, particularly on the manufacturing side. While we have this ambitious target of 175, and if you go to the next one, and also the 2030 target of 450 gigawatt. If you can go to the next one, please. So now, how the RE manufacturing is important for India, and we all know this. We have been working in this sector, so it will always obviously contribute to the GDP and the boost the local economy, as I mentioned before. And we have to achieve this ambitious target of 450 gigawatt because the country has committed itself to the 2030 NDC target. Imported dependence on the imported fuel, reduction on that is one of the topmost priority for the government and all the stakeholders here. And it will also support small and medium enterprises, those who are associated with the RE manufacturing sector application also. It will also provide skilling and the employment opportunity to a large sector of the economy. Now, I will go to the 5 technologies, and I picked up first the solar manufacturing part in India. So if you see the solar manufacturing over the years, say from 2014 till 2021, on the one hand, PV module and solar cell, these two I have put it there on the slide. So 14,000 kind of megawatt on the module, whereas the solar cell is just 4,000. So that means our dependence is huge on the imported material for the solar sector as a whole, because we are not producing to the desired capacity as far as the cell is concerned. There are some leading players like Wari, Adani, Vikram Solar, Goldi, and Tata Power, MV, but the capacity to the global scale is limited. So the Wari has, the capacity of 2 gigawatt, whereas we have 10 plus kind of gigawatt capacities globally. So we need to increase the capacity of the bigger players. At the same time, the total overall production capacity also needs to be increased. And this is reflected in the annual import of cells and modules. So while if you see from 2016-17 to 2021, the amount we spent on importing.
Sorry, may I again request the person operating the slide to move to the next slide? We are a slide behind, so can't see correlate with the numbers you're talking about, Amit. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So as you can see on the annual import of cells and modules, which I was referring to the right side of the right one graph, you can see here that while from 2016-17 to 2021, the amount in crores has reduced. And this is largely because the cost has come down. But we are increasing year by year the quantity, which is 3,600, as you can see, in 2021, as against 1,468 in 2016-17. So we have taken, obviously, the benefit of the reduced cost of solar panels, solar modules in the world. But at the same time, our demand on the absolute basis has been growing up. And this is where we have to invest and we have to be self-dependent, Atmanirbhar as we call it. So up to 85% of the solar panels are imported from China and Vietnam. And we also know who is investing in Southeast Asia. So essentially it is the one single source. And we have imported something like 88,000 crores in the last 5 years. So that's a huge amount which the country has invested to import. And every year, if we have calculated that every year for 1 gigawatt, we will generate 3,000 to 4,000 jobs, which includes half of it as a direct job. Please go to the next slide, please. Now, solar manufacturing, these are straight away the recommendations as part of our discussion with various stakeholders. We discussed with all leading players in the sector, the policymakers, both at the center and the state level, the financial institutions and other stakeholders who are interested in this, based on which we have summarized here and bucketed into 4 classifications: policy, financial, skilling and R&D, and the infrastructure. While on the one hand, we are saying that, and this is common, that more coordination between center and state on the pipeline. So manufacturers want to know as to what is the pipeline, say, for the next 10 years. We have 450 overall gigawatt kind of, but what is the annual pipeline? How much will come, is likely to come from the central agencies like SECI, NTPC and all, and from the state government agencies. PLI for ancillary component is one of the recommendations, that while we have PLI, which is there for the solar PV and also for the batteries in the sector, but we feel that PLI for ancillary components and smaller facilities will also give a boost to the overall sector. Ease of clearances, resolution of change of law, and a phased-wise manufacturing plan for yearly duty incidents on solar, so that there is no problem as far as the clarity on at which stage how much duties will be there. If that is provided by the government, I think that will help all the manufacturers in planning from their side. Attracted export incentive from the financial side, and a uniform GST on components and products is what is required. I think a differential in the GST is actually not helping the matters. Project-specific financing There are dedicated financial institutions. Government of India has IREDA. There are other banks and financial institutions into it. But at the same time, for enhanced manufacturing capacities, I think we need to think through on either, their ticket size has to go up, or a separate dedicated financial institution, or banks have some kind of a policy so that there is ease in project specific financing from them. Uh, if you have to counter the big players, particularly globally from China, whether the low interest financing schemes will work, I think that is something which we need to discuss. The government will have to discuss with the stakeholders, but that's a recommendation that this will actually help the matters, particularly in the beginning years. Skilling and R&D, that is required because, for us to compete on a continuous basis, on a sustainable basis, we have to invest in R&D. We have to invest on the skilling side of it. So I think introducing a solar manufacturing in the NSDM mission is something what is required now. And R&D, various technological institutes and associations and the manufacturers will have to work together on R&D so that they can compete with global players. On the infrastructure side, just like, we have this solar park for the production or the wind park for production, if we can have a manufacturing clusters for the for solar is something that will, because then you can pool your resources and the overall cost can be brought down. And you have ancillary units around it so that it's one single place, plug and play for everybody to, so that we have reduction in the overall manufacturing side of it. Low electricity cost, this is what we everybody feels is required. And there are countries who are providing this low electricity cost kind of thing for the manufacturers, particularly in the solar sector, and which I think will because it's like a raw material for this sector, so it will actually be helpful. Quality focused manufacturing enforcement and updated land record status, because land ultimately is going to be an issue for this sector as a whole, whether it is manufacturing or even for the power generation side of it. Large-scale polysilicon manufacturing facilities through PSU is one of the recommendations because that is something which is in scarce commodity right now. On the investment potential, as you can see, we have estimated till 2030 that total investment is of the order of 1 lakh crore, 1,09,000 crore is something which is possible, and it will have capacity addition of something like 40,000 megawatt by 2030. Next, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Yes, we are on the wind slide, Amit.
Yeah. So this is the wind manufacturing in India. I'm going to take up the next sector, wind one. So wind manufacturing in India, if you can have a look at what has happened in the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So you see the world, we have compared world, India, how much has been the change in both the global scale, also at India scale. On the wind manufacturing side, 10,000 plus megawatt every year is what we can produce. That's what the capacity is. And there are global players who are present in India. Suzlon, homegrown company, is doing wonders. They have 4,200 megawatt capacity. Vestas, 3,000 megawatt. Inox, One World India. So we have good players, those who are not only feeding to the domestic market, but at the same time also fueling the export from India to other regions. RLMM, MNRE has approved 36 different WTG models from 14 manufacturers, and also at the same time, they have also provided the concessional custom duty, which is helping this sector. You can go to the next one. So on the recommendation side, again, we have bucketed into 4: policy, infrastructure, skilling, R&D, and financial. The main recommendation here is that, again, drawing a pipeline for next 2 to 3 years, a PLI scheme, separate PLI scheme for wind sector is what is required. And all the sector players, they said that, this will be really, really helpful in further upgrading their capacity and also coming out with new manufacturing capacity. A PMP for duty structure and repowering of existing projects, a policy on that, so that we can get the benefit of new technologies and a higher production in the sector. Wind projects by other industries under captive or open access route. This has been a demand of the industry for quite some time. Now is the time that we make it happen. And a separate RPO for wind. As we all know that there are two clusters of two sections of RPO, one for solar, one for non-solar. So why don't we have a RPO specific for wind so that we have the clarity as to what is required at the state level and how much can be fed into that particular state and region. On the infrastructure side, again, prioritize land allotment and structured approach for project auction, ready infrastructure for plug and play mode. This is happening in some places. But if we have a policy around it so that, there is a clarity for all the manufacturers that this is where, they can go and set up and which is available in the plug and play mode, like the solar park we have tried. So similar thing, I think, need to be done in this area as well. Again, on the skilling and R&D, same recommendation that, dedicated budget for R&D, where the industry, academia, and also the institutions at the government level can work together under a policy so that, we do not lag behind the global players. On the financial side, promote export with certain incentive, if that is possible, temporary relaxation on anti-dumping duty on casting, green tariff, uniform GST and electricity, if it is possible to come under GST, will be really, really helpful for this sector. Again, on this sector, we identified what is the total capacity addition, 15,000 megawatt by 2030, and an investment of something like 1,03,832. That is the kind of investment which it can attract by that year. If you can go to the next one, please. It is the green hydrogen now. And what we have done in the green hydrogen, we are talking of 4 types of hydrogen, and we are focusing here on the green one. So hydrogen produced through the electrolysis of water with sustainably generated electricity is what we are defining as a green hydrogen. Whereas we have blue, gray, and turquoise hydrogen as well. On the application of hydrogen, as the government is right now focusing on, and we know that the government is also focusing on coming out with a roadmap for green hydrogen. So it is used for ammonia production, steel, certain in other industries like refinery and methanol. And it could be a cost-effective way of providing inter-seasonal storage in a highly variable electricity from 2040. Hydrogen for commercial uses in fuel cell, and the government is also eyeing for fuel cell to produce electricity, and also hydrogen can be utilized in the e-mobility sector, and thereby it will compete with the batteries going forward. And light duty passenger and freight transport is probably one of the ideal place for in the e-mobility section. 75,000 new hydrogen jobs envisaged by 2030 as per our analysis. In 2020, India consumed something like 6 million metric tons of hydrogen, whereas by 2050, we expect it to grow by 4.5 times. If you can do the next slide, please. So on the green hydrogen economy, the recommendations, because this is a new rising sector, a new sector, I think the policy most important is demand creation by setting targets and roadmap. While we have a clear-cut target and for solar, for wind, and for small hydro, etc. But we are yet to set up that kind of a target. Target always helps because then the stakeholders and everybody goes to achieve those targets and identifies the roadblocks and the likely solutions to achieve those. So the policy, if it comes out by setting targets and roadmap, will be wonderful. Introducing hydrogen purchase obligation, HPO as we are calling it, just like the RPO, that will be really useful. And also international alliance to explore export opportunities. So that will encourage the players there in the local market to go for manufacturing of this. On the infrastructure side, optimize distribution networks for green hydrogen. And we also need to develop standards and certifications. Facilitating a storage capacity is the most important aspect, as we all know, for the hydrogen, storage pressure, etc. And I think a policy needs to come out. And I'm sure that the government, while working on this, on the roadmap for green hydrogen, will consider all this. But this is what the recommendation from the industry is, and from our analysis that we need to do that. Incentivize program electrolyzer, and we are hearing that government is planning to come out with a PLI for this. But this is something which the industry also feels that is the need of the hour, and we need to come out with a PLI for this. Funding for demonstration in some of the pilot projects to start with, so that there is more confidence, is because this is a new sector. It's a new sector, unlike the solar and the wind, and that's where I think funding is required for demonstration pilot. We also estimated as to what is the investment potential. By 2030, it goes to close to 18,000 crores. And we feel in terms of percentages, the replacement of gray by green, the share can be as high as 6%, which is 1% in 2021. So 6 times growth in the consumption of green. If you can go to the next quickly.
Yes,
on the biofuel,
Amit, if I may request to sort of speed up, because we have the secretary also going to address this.
Absolutely. So I'll just take 2 minutes. If you can go to the next one on the biofuel side. Next slide, please. So biofuel market, and I'm covering both the bioethanol and biodiesel. So ethanol blending, as we all know, expected is 8.5% in 2021, while it has been hovering around 5% for last two years. And we are up to 2G, which is made from non-food crops or inedible crops, while 3G is being experimented, made from microorganisms like algae. And ethanol production, we have few companies in the private sector who have a huge capacity, 320, 320, and Godavari 400. By March 2022, we are expecting molasses-based distilleries capacity something like 519 crores liters per annum. And this will go up by 50% in the next 3-4 years. And grain-based distilleries, 740 crores liters, which will go up from current 250. So if you can go to the next slide, I will not cover the other aspects here. So on the recommendation side, policy formulate a biofuel mission, set up biofuel board, remunerative pricing on methanol from other crops is something what is required. We have a draft policy, but I think if these three are defined, then I think this will be useful for the players, manufacturers to set up their targets and their plans. Concessional loans to distilleries and exemption on excise duty clearly is required. Skilling and R&D, as in other sectors, will be useful. On the infrastructure side, which is most important for this sector, improved sugarcane cultivation and water management, ethanol blending at the refinery side, and adopt best practices, particularly from countries like Brazil on the ethanol, I think will be useful. So some kind of a cooperation with the government, G2G can be organized, will be really helpful. And use of GIS in supply chain management and expansion of distillery on the variety of crops is what is useful. On the bioethanol, while we have a clear-cut, government roadmap or a vision that 25% blending is possible, 25% is what is required, and industry also feels the same, that if that is something which is achievable and which is the desired one, then I think they will invest. And the investment of something like 1 lakh crore will be possible if we have a target of 25%, as I said. On the biodiesel side, on the other hand, I think 5% is what will attract something like 75,000 crores on the biodiesel side. If you go to the next one. So very quickly on the energy storage, which is the last piece, in the next slide, as you can see. So energy storage, import of lithium ion cells has increased quite a bit in the last 3 years, 2018-19 to 2021. If you can see, it is hovering around 800,000 crores. And this is a lot to do with the telecom towers who are using this, and also in three-wheelers, e-rickshaws as we call it. And a PLI for ACC has already been announced. I think Niti Aayog and DHI are working on it. A minimum 5 gigawatt hour capacity and going up to 20 gigawatt hour kind of capacity is what one can bid for. domestic value addition of at least 25%, which is going up to 60%. This is a very good step in terms of Atmanirbhar and really making it localized as compared to other sectors. We all know that 60% of this total battery which we are going to produce is going to be consumed in the electric mobility sector, and the remaining one in the storage and the appliances. These three are largely the areas. Next, please. We can go to the policy recommendation.
Yes, we are on the last slide. Perhaps you can just
Yes,
quickly summarize.
So this is the recommendation on the policy side: exempt duty on EV and frame policy on the storage. A long-term policy and regulations will be really helpful for all the players who are going to invest hugely. So 18,500 crore is what the government is saying we are going to provide the subsidy, but 40,000 plus is what industry is going to invest on it directly. So availability of low-cost financing and manufacturing of cell components and battery pack. On the JVs, technology partnership and JVs, for this to happen on the ground, raw material is the main thing, the main bottleneck. And there, I think a JV with international players on the technology and the raw material, both on these sides, I think will be really helpful. MOU to acquire raw material from Chile, Australia, Congo, Bolivia. The government has already done it, but I think some more proactive action as we go forward will be really helpful for these players. Yes, next. If I just have 1 minute. Next, please.
Okay, Amit, I think
thank you.
We will have the
We have
presentation
covered.
available
Yes.
for everybody. You've covered everything. So thank you. Thanks so much for all the hard work. And I have we have now the keynote address by the Secretary of the MNRE. Apologies, sir, for overshooting the time. You're obviously the leader of the sector for the country in new renewable energy. I don't know whether this. I hope you find this recommendations useful. It might be a bit too early, perhaps, for you to react immediately to some of the submissions. But over to you for your keynote address, sir. Thank you.
I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Rajiv Ranjan Mishra, Co-Chairman, CII National Committee on Power. Mr. Amit Kumar, partner PwC, my friend and batchmate Gauri Singh, Dr. Praveer Sinha, distinguished participants. So let me begin by thanking you for this presentation. I mean, events like this are useful for us because they give us new insights, and they also sort of point to the mistakes we might be making. So thank you very much for the presentation and for this program. So let me begin by making a couple of general points. Now, why should government at all intervene or interfere in RE manufacturing or any manufacturing for that matter? So the general argument is that the government should intervene if there is an externality. And as has been pointed out by previous speakers, the externality could be in terms of a desirable national goal, for example, the current account deficit, or the strategic imperative of reducing reliance in a strategic sector like energy. So having intervened in the market, there will always be a disturbance. There will always be an effect somewhere. And there will always possibly be losers and winners. So I think the key point here is that we have to, reconcile the tensions to the best of our abilities. And for that, I think industry should make as much of an effort as the government does. And let me also state here that we are fully committed to smoothen the problems industry faces, and we are committed to doing so on a day-to-day basis. But I just want to reiterate that there will be tensions, and there are tensions, and we need everyone's cooperation to sort of resolve those tensions. So that is the first general point I wanted to make. The second is that protection to domestic industry, the infant industry argument, and that you need to protect domestic industry till it generates economies of scale and till it becomes competitive. So that argument is also valid here. But that said, after a few years, and that is something we don't talk about, after say 5 years of PLI or 5 years of protection, what happens? I mean, are we competitive enough? So that is another question that we really need to address. And I would urge industry to sort of look at this very carefully. Now coming to the specific sectors, I will respond here on some of the points that have been made, and I will not on some other points. So let me begin with solar. Now our module capacity today is about estimates vary, but 8 to 10 gigawatts. And I understand that out of this capacity, all this capacity is not of sufficiently good quality. Our cell capacity is about 2.5 gigawatt annual. So, and if we are to achieve our national targets going forward, 450 gigawatt and 175 gigawatt in the next couple of years, the target is by December 2022. The solar cells and modules we need is about 25 to 30 gigawatt per annum. Now, that is the sort of increase we are targeting, and we have taken a number of steps. 1 year back, I was not at all hopeful that all these would materialize. That they have is something which is surprising to me. And now everything has come together, and there are provisions for demand creation, there is incentive for production, and there is protection from imports. So what we have done is there is domestic content requirement which generates demand. We have this KUSUM and CPSU and solar rooftop where use of domestically produced cells and modules is compulsory. The basic customs duty has been announced from 1st April 2022, 40% on modules and 25% on cells. And we have this approved list of models and manufacturers which caters to quality, but which also serves another purpose, which I think all of us are aware of. We have the PLI scheme, which has received a huge response, and our initial estimates are that bids amounting to about 30 gigawatt would be submitted. We have limited funds, and we will go in for more funds if they fall short. So all this, our estimates are that by March 2024, this should result in additional capacity addition of 25 gigawatts of modules, 25 gigawatt of cells, and 10 gigawatt of wafer and ingots. Now, all these measures are not acceptable as they are today to industry across board. I mean, there are some segments which say that you defer the imposition of BCD. There are some who have issues about approved list of models and manufacturers. But in a larger national perspective, I mean, the ministry's view is that the constellation of all these measures is good, and we should stay the course and abide with these and not tinker it too much, because policy uncertainty is never good for anyone. So, and I think there was also mention in the presentations about manufacturing clusters and about research and development and about GST. Now, GST is an issue we have been taking up with the finance ministry on a continuous basis. I think there are some wrinkles to be addressed there, and we hope in the coming months we'll be able to do that. The link between R&D and the link between high technology, good technology for production is not crystal clear. It's good to have good R&D, but that does not mean that you have to wait for high-end R&D to actually come up with production facilities that use the latest technologies. And we hope that in our PLI scheme we will get the latest technologies from abroad into manufacturing units in India. About manufacturing clusters, a scheme is already in pipeline. We are working with the Power Ministry to have a scheme for both power and RE manufacturing clusters. So this is about solar. Just one more point. I think there was a mention of visibility of the bids that would be floated. Now somehow we have not succeeded, and my personal view has been that we should have a clear trajectory of bids, but we have not done that so far. But roughly what we propose is, what we estimate is that through our central bidding agencies, the NTPC, NHPC, and SECI, we'll have bids of about 15 gigawatt per year in the next after the next year or so, and the rest, about 15 gigawatt, would come from state-specific bids and from schemes like KUSUM and CPSU. So that's about solar. Now wind, we are fairly good in domestic manufacturing. The ministry so far has not seen a case for PLI. I mean, that demand has been raised, and we will consider it seriously in the next 15-20 days. We are going to have a number of brainstorming sessions on wind, because we do want wind to get a boost. It has been somewhat stagnant, but so far the case for PLI is not clearly made out. But we'll take another look at it, and we'll also work on offshore wind. That's an area where we have not been able to really progress. On green hydrogen, I think we have taken good steps early on, and the hydrogen mission document is under interministerial consultation. The green purchase obligation cabinet note is also under interministerial consultation, and we have purchased we have proposed green hydrogen purchase obligations for the refining and the fertilizer sector, and our estimates are that the price difference wouldn't be significant if we do impose those obligations. And the target here really is to notify the obligations within this year, and then implement it 2023-24 onward. So we are very hopeful about this, and I mean, the thinking is that if you create demand, manufacturing automatically comes in, and there shouldn't be a need for PLI. So again, this demand for PLI for hydrogen manufacturing is somewhat something which we don't fully understand. My view is that our interventions should be neat and limited. If we intervene in too many directions and too many things, I think the potential for confusion is great. Biomass is another, bioenergy is another area which we think will pick up hugely, and that is because of the indications we have got. It's not because of something we have done, and we have done a lot of things, but the demand is actually, for example, the municipal waste to energy projects. The demand is coming from the states, and we already have a pipeline of big projects in a number of cities. If I'm not wrong, I think 23 projects are in the pipeline, and our estimate is that the program will be scaled up about 8 times if Finance Ministry agrees and we have the requisite approvals. So we have about an outlay of about 500 crore for 5 years or 3 years, and that we think will go up to about 4,000 crore. So an important thing we have done in bioenergy is that we are collaborating very closely with the Petroleum Ministry and on their Satat program. So they guarantee offtake, and we provide a subsidy. And we have also at their behest, we have also reduced the customs duty on plant and machinery which is required for such waste to energy plants. So That is about all I wish to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I think it has been noticeable that the government, the MNRE, is already working on many of the areas that this study recommends. That has been. I think from industry side, we should also probably think of the couple of points made by the secretary. Not only the fact that everyone has to play their part, but also how the government itself receives sometimes contradictory advice from various parts of the industry, and obviously have the difficult task of reconciling all of those. I think the point about as definitionally being for a certain period of time is also a sound one, and that perhaps goes into generally the steps that we as a nation have to take to make doing business easy and competitive, so that we do not have to ask the government to intervene again and again in multiple things. So anyway, thank you very much, Secretary, for his address. I now have the pleasure of perspective sharing from two very eminent people. The first is by Ms. Gauri Singh, who is the Deputy Director General of International Renewable Energy Agency, but prior to that has worked in several state governments as well as the central government in India, and indeed was closely associated with the National Solar Mission, I think back in 2010. Very pleased, ma'am, that you could join us, and the floor is yours. Perhaps you are in a unique position, not only having worked in India, but in your role in IRENA, also perhaps seeing the best practices or the issues being faced by the industry around the world. So I think it'll be useful, very interesting for us to hear your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. Secretary MNRE, Mr. Chaturvedi, Mr. Amit Kumar, Mr. Sinha, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here, to be in this very important plenary session, and thank you, CI, for inviting me. I think what we've heard is really a very interesting story of how the policymakers and the manufacturing and the industry are coming together along with the IPPs to really make that huge energy transition requirements for India possible. Now, what I'd really like to do is to take you through some of the global mega trends, because unless you contextualize policy and the ensuing decisions for manufacturing in a global context, I think while I do understand that our focus is on Atmanirbhar Bharat, but it's also on being able to develop India as a manufacturing hub for the world. So in that context, I'd like to just talk about some of the mega trends that are that we see happening, and I'd like to start by saying that right now, of course, the world is grappling with the challenges of climate change and the ongoing health crisis. But at the same time, we also know, and IPCC in its special report on the 1.5 degree centigrade has pointed out very clearly that the energy emissions must reach net zero in 2050. So in a sense, we are entering a decade which will really define whether we have a fighting chance in keeping the temperature rise to 1.5 degree or not. And this these are conversations that are happening at the G20, at the UN, and all the high-level forums. And you would have seen last year that there has been a momentum that has been created around countries, regions, economies coming out and really committing to very, very high climate ambitions. So while when you're looking at the objectives of policy making in India, obviously greening the economy and sustaining India's leadership in deployment of renewables, the energy security and independence, and creating the ecosystems for future supply chains in India will remain the focus. But and obviously every country will have their own strategy, but there's some very clear trends emerging. IRENA's very new world energy transition outlook points out that over 90% of the solutions that will shape a successful outcome of net zero in 2050 involve renewable energy through direct supply, electrification, energy efficiency, green hydrogen, and also bioenergy combined with CCS. So, I heard the Secretary speaking about technology options. Our sense is that the technology avenues leading to a decarbonized energy system are likely to be dominated by solutions that are, that are already there or in a very advanced stage of development, which can be deployed very rapidly and at a scale. So this really means that one of the key things and the shifts that is happening is that by 2050, electricity will be the main energy carrier, increasing from the current share of about 21% in the total final energy consumption to over 50%. And as this shift happens, we will see increasing use of renewable energy in place of fossil fuels in end-use applications also, which we haven't really seen that kind of a rise. And this shift will imply that the annual growth rate of renewable technologies will see almost an 8-fold increase. And we also think that that EVs, which currently account for about 80%, will account for about 80% of road activity by 2050. Now, obviously, all this has because whatever we are looking at in terms of policy or in terms of manufacturing decisions in India, this context has to be really kept in mind. Energy efficiency and energy efficiency technology measures are which are available for significant scale up are also going to play a huge role, because what we see is that energy conservation and efficiency will be crucial and critical to reduce total final energy consumption from the current 378 exajoule to about 348 exajoules in 2050. So the third very important trend that we are going to see is hydrogen and its derivatives, accounting for 12% of the final energy used by 2050. Just to put this in perspective, to be able to do that, the electrolyzer capacity that will be needed in 2050 is likely to be in the range of 5,000 gigawatts, as compared to the 0.3 gigawatts that it is today. So naturally, India being a manufacturing hub and frugal engineering being our forte, this is a very important development that we need to keep track on and be early, use it to an early advantage as we ramp up our capacities to be able to fulfill some of the demand that's likely to come up. By 2030, we estimate that renewable power will reach about nearly 11,000 gigawatts. almost of going 4 times the current capacity. And what that will also mean is, the variable renewable energy right now in the Indian power system is about 10%. We expect that by 2050 globally, the variable renewable energy component would go up to nearly 60%. That obviously means that the infrastructure upgrade, modernization and expansion is going to be a high priority for the country and for globally. And it will enable modern technologies to be integrated as an enabler for the energy transition. So I also want to just spend a couple of minutes on how we also think the financing is going to make a shift. So currently, if you look at how the total energy sector investment is financed, 80% is actually financed through private sources. And the share of debt capital we feel will increase quite substantially in 2050. So energy transition technologies and manufacturing should find it relatively easy to obtain long-term debt financing, and the brown assets will progressively find it difficult to go that route and will be forced to rely on equity financing from retained earnings or new equity issues. So the other important trend that I want to emphasize here, because it would play a very major role in how the policy gets shaped around support to manufacturing, and that is currently the public sector provides globally around 450 billion in form of public equity and lending by development finance institutions. And we expect that this would grow almost twofold to catalyze private finance needed for the energy transition. And public debt financing will remain important because it acts as a facilitator for other lenders, especially in emerging markets, where there's a perception of high risk, and in some cases, of course, it's also important to reduce the cost of financing. We also heard Mr. Amit Kumar speak about jobs, and we feel that the jobs that will come from renewable energy globally will grow from the 11.5 million that are currently there to about 43, so a fourfold increase. So what I really think is important is when policy is made, we're really looking at a much more holistic vision that we would like to take forward, because it is, of course, about meeting the deployment targets that have been set, and manufacturing will respond to it. But equally important, I think, is to think of our vision of how the opportunities are unfolding globally for India to make its very strong space in as a manufacturing hub at the global level. So I will stop here and of course be open for any questions that come in.
So thank you, Ms. Gauri Singh. It was quite amazing, and it's really helpful for us. Sometimes we can get caught up in the minutiae of the local market. It's really interesting for us to hear the shape of the energy transition on a global or international basis. I do have a few questions myself for you. But if I could perhaps request you to just stay on, and my colleague and friend, Dr. Praveer Sinha, the Managing Director and CEO of Tata Power, he's running late already for a meeting. So if I can now first request Praveer to share his perspective, and then whatever time remains we can perhaps use in Q&A. So Praveer, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Rajiv, and Secretary Mr. Chaturvedi, Mrs. Gauri Singh, Amit Kumar, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here for discussion on the roadmap for developing India as a RE manufacturing hub. I think this is a decade for India for renewable. This is a fact that everyone knows and admits. And the challenge is, how do we speed up? How do we bring pace in the way that things are happening? Whether we talk of solar energy, we talk of wind energy, we talk of hybrids between solar and wind, we talk of hybrids where storage also comes in, and now of course we are talking about hydrogen. So I think there is a great opportunity that we have going forward. Someone has to mute.
May I request all the other participants to please place yourselves on mute except the speaker. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the way forward for India is that how do we enhance the speed and create the right ecosystem for large penetration of renewable energy, and along with it the added hybrid solutions and the various other solutions that we are talking about. Now, I think when we look at India, we have today 370 gigawatt of capacity, total installed capacity. In renewable, we have 95 gigawatts. For the first time, solar has overtaken wind with 41 gigawatt. And I think going forward, India with more than 300 days of sunshine in most of the parts of India, with very good radiation level, can really become the hub for renewable production globally. In fact, for solar production globally. And when we talk of solar production, it's not just talking about the cells and modules, but the total ecosystem where we bring the ingots, we make silica, then do the ingots and the wafers, or the new technologies, the thin film technologies that is coming up now. And how do we create demand for that? Secretary mentioned about 25 gigawatt manufacturing capacity by 25. But I think we can do much more, provided the demand is there. And we have seen in last few years, while it has grown at a very, very rapid pace, in fact, the CAGR for renewable has been 17% in last 5 years. We also find that there are huge bottlenecks, and the bottleneck is in creating the demand. We have utilities, the government discoms, which today do not have appetite to take more of a renewable capacity. They already have large number of power plants which they have tied up. They have large quantity of renewables that they have tied up, and they are not able to schedule that power. They are not able to pay for that power. And how do you create the ecosystem whereby there is a huge demand? And if you have a huge demand, and if the utilities are able to consume that much of power, then I don't think beyond a certain stage the PLI incentive which has come is really required, because it will be all market driven, and the market will determine what is the competition and what is the tariff at which market will bid and at which they will be able to sustain and provide the service. So I think the demand creation is the biggest challenge that we have today in the country. And this is not only at the utility scale, but also at various other scales. Also, if we talk of solar pumps, we have in our country something like 3 crore pumps, 30 million pumps, out of which 90 lakh pumps are still DG set run. The government program of Kusum talks about increasing the present 3 lakh solar pumps to something like 40 lakhs. We still have a gap to even cover for the DG sector pumps. And then, of course, you have the normal pumps which are running on the DISCOM supply. And so you have a huge market. And we are talking about not just 10x, but 100x sort of numbers can come if we try to solarize all the pump sets. Similarly, the distributed generation, whether it is in urban areas or rural areas, because it does not make any sense for utilities to take distribution lines and transmission lines for 50 and 100 kilometers and supply small quantity of electricity in villages. So how do we come up with solutions whereby distributed generation becomes a norm and we are able to utilize that energy and locally, produce locally and utilize it locally? And that's an area that again offers great opportunity. And so when we talk of that we are going to create the RE manufacturing hub, we need to look at it in totality rather than looking at it in piecemeal. We are not, it's not just about making the solar panels and modules, but having the inverter manufacturing, having these solutions for storage or solutions for hydrogen, having the biomass. And we need to combine all of them, integrate all of them, because at the end of the day, the customer wants 24/7 electricity. He is not worried that you are giving only 6 hours or 8 hours of supply through solar or another 12 hours in the evening from wind plants. They are interested that what is it that gives us certainty that I will get 24/7 supply of electricity when we want and not when you want to supply electricity. And I think that's where the RE manufacturing that we are talking about needs to encompass many of the other components so that it becomes a total RE, not manufacturing only, but RE services that can be provided in a comprehensive manner. The last area that I feel that normally gets very much neglected is on the regulations and the regulatory part of it. We have very good proposals. We have in the country the RPO obligation is there. It has been there for last 8-9 years. States are supposed to follow that, but most of the time they are not following. Today, they are supposed to have nearly 20% of their energy requirement through renewable sources, whether we talk of solar or non-solar. But most of the states are much less than even the 10% norms. So I think there is a huge opportunity which is there whereby enforcement of the regulatory norms has to be ensured to see that whatever policies, whatever regulations are there is there. Because while one would say that these are overarching regulations or rules, but they have a huge impact in ensuring that when you create the manufacturing hub, there is an equal demand and you will be able to produce in volume and to that extent become competitive in providing lower cost of energy. So in terms of the perspective that one has to look at, one has to look at the renewable opportunity, that it's a huge opportunity, but every segment, every stakeholder has a big role to play and they need to contribute. And for that, it's very, very important that the policy making and the regulatory mechanism work in tandem with the industry and support in larger penetration of renewable energy. So I will stop over here, Rajiv, and look forward for questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Dr. Sinha. I know we have overshot, and apologies for that. So it just leaves me about 5 minutes. I'll just start off by a couple of questions, and if there are any questions from other participants, they will be highlighted to me by Varun, my colleague Varun Bhardwaj from CII. So hopefully people will post it in the chat box. And I go back to you, Ms. Singh, ma'am. I know, and in order to make it easy for you, let me just say that this is a question to you in an individual capacity, not reflecting the views of either IRENA or the government of India or anything like that. But just as an Indian who has seen, been closely involved with the sector here, as well as has seen what's going on around the world. Because quite frankly, some of the things you said, I had read about it, but my head started reeling. 80% of road activity by EVs, and 2050 is not that far away. So it's quite an amazing thing that is going on. And I wanted to put you on spot in an individual basis, if you like, with two questions. First, do you think we should, as a nation, and COP26 is coming up, there is this clamor for announcing a target for net zero, particularly since our neighbor to the north also chose 2060 for some reason, I'm not quite sure. But and in own interactions and discussions in the industry and the government here, one has seen a little bit of mixed views about it. Do you think we should commit to it at this stage or not?
All right. So, I have seen how I've been in the government for lots of years. So I have seen the psyche of government officers work and react. So to my mind, when a commitment like this gets announced for 2050 or beyond, I think there's, of course, it does give visibility to what we are expecting the trajectory to be. But to my own experience has been that I think as a community of stakeholders really interested in renewable energy, whether it's government, industry, or others, I think what really works well for us is having clear decadal targets, and which is what has been done by putting out this 450 gigawatt kind of a vision. Now, why I'm saying this is because you've seen really that we've been used to this 5-year planning processes. So suddenly, when you're looking at 2050 and beyond, what might happen is that for all of us involved in it might be, okay, this seems like a very long way off. So and which is why, if you insistence is not just to have these long-term commitments coming from countries, which I'm sure at some point we will also do that. But the real I think the crux is in having very, very clear targets and goal setting for the decade of the 2020s, because this is where the action will happen. I mean, is it a good kind of a signal to say, okay, you keep doing what you need to as business as usual, say till 2040, and then we'll see. That's not where you want us to go. So I think, personally, given the kind of psyche we operate in, I think having this kind of a decadal, 450 kind of a thing, which is large and staring at all of us, I think that's a really important signal for all of us.
Thank you very much. That's excellent perspective. Amit, if I can just switch to you for a minute and just ask, the secretary was right in pointing out, obviously various parts of the industry, we want various things from the government. Sometimes they contradict, and sometimes it can appear to the government that it's never ending. Now, the point that he made is we do make, and all of us want, we do say that the government has no business to be in business. Interruptions by the government in the free market should be limited, and so on and so forth. Now, he did raise the important question as to how long the PLI is and in how many sectors. You did point out, and you interacted extensively with all the manufacturers. I represent an IPP, so it's I unfortunately do not have a good sense on it. But you talked about the high price of industry and electricity for industry, and you talked about the problems with land acquisition. Do you have a sense that And obviously there are all kinds of actions the government has been taking in the sort of improving the ease of doing business. Do you think, but going back to RE manufacturing, if you think reform and removal of the distortions in the market on those two fields, would that be kind of enough to sort of say 5 years from now we can turn around to Mr. Chaturvedi and say, thank you very much. Now the industry is standing on its own hand and on feet and is globally competitive, and we don't need your the PLI from the government?
Excellent question. And Mr. Mishra, we also had a detailed discussion with the industry captains on this. And in every sector, solar, wind, and others as well, those who ask for, although they may be a sunrise sector, so to say. So the question is, the bottom line is that we have to be globally competitive. We drill down as to which are the areas where we are suffering as compared to global manufacturers. So some of the areas which came out very clearly, India versus the rest, and when I say rest, it is China and other producers who are more competitive than India. We found out that it is the electricity cost, because in case of solar and in others, like even in battery also, so electricity is like a raw material. Now, if you find that, a country is giving, 30 or 40% discount on the electricity versus a country like us who do not have any, or rather the subsidize in favor of some other sectors at the cost of the manufacturers and the industry per se. So I think a rethinking is required as to how we become competitive. So I'm not saying that we should match, but at the same time, we should not get subsidized from this sector, so to say. So that is one part. Second is, industry was looking for, and we also feel that a long-term vision. So 450 gigawatt, as Ms. Gauri said, perfectly fine. We have a target. We must have a target. And then we should drill down as to what next year, and the ministry, secretary also mentioned that one thing which they want to do is give a clarity on year-wise kind of bids which are going to come out from various whether it is NTPC, SECI, state governments, so on and so forth. That will help the manufacturers in their planning, and also the kind of investment they want to make. At the same time, the second part, which is if we have that kind of a vision, where is the land? And progressively, this is going to become a difficult kind of a issue. It is already becoming difficult. So the stakeholders said that if from the manufacturing point of view, that is why the recommendation that can we have a zone, manufacturing zone, like we have the solar park, we have the wind park kind of. Can we have a zone where all the resources can be pulled together, and that will help in bringing down the cost overall per se, right? And plug and play, as we call it, for these kind of. So I think land, we need to address that issue, although it is very state specific, but I think center and state can come together and sort it out as to where this land can be provided, and then the manufacturers can plan for it. So I think we need to work on all the parameters. I'm not saying that others are not important. They are all important. The policy, regulation, open access, we all know that we have been struggling with the open access kind of issues. But I think from the manufacturer's perspective, if they have to invest money, the investment is for the long term. And they want to be sure that there is a sustainable policy, a good policy, and we have to, if we have to be globally competitive, some kind of incentive is required. Or very specific to your PLI thing, I think if PLI, it is not a long-term solution. It is just to kickstart. Government is just working as a catalyst. It's just working as a catalyst. In case of solar PV, it is what, 10,000 megawatt, not much. 4,500 crores, not much even from the government perspective also. But it is creating an atmosphere that, a good vibes which is coming into the sector, that everybody is focused and let's go into it. That's what it is.
Well, thank you very much. This has been the most interesting session, and quite frankly, I myself I would have loved to ask a few more questions, but I do want to end on time, and I just have 2 minutes left. So I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Amit Kumar and his colleagues in PwC for the great work done. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Honorable Secretary, Mr. Chaturvedi. I think what was heartening, so to see that the ministry is already aware of these issues and is working on it, and we also noted, of course, that he said that they'll be doing a lot of sessions over the next 10 or 15 days, and we look forward to outcome of those. And finally, to Ma'am Gauri Singh, thank you so much. It was absolutely fascinating hearing from you about the global energy transition and the route it is taking. Finally, to my colleague and fellow co-chair of the Power Committee, Dr. Praveer Sinha, who has left, thank you in absentia for taking part, and thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.